Buddy, we're excited to be here. So we want to chat college and career ready, which is a phrase we have been using for years now. But in talking with Lindsay, we decided that our question for today is ready as it's defined actually enough? For those of you that haven't met us before, I'm Marnie Stockman, former high school math teacher and administrator, now co-author of The Business of You and the co-builder of Blue, which we'll talk about a little bit today. And with me is Nick.
Yeah, I am Nick Coniglio. I am from the business world, former programmer turned business exec. And now Marnie and I are working together with schools, students, and educators around really one basic idea, which is what we're talking about today. And that's that readiness only matters if it turns into something that students can actually use. Because the world our students are walking into really doesn't care if they were technically quote unquote on track. It cares if they can explain who they are, what they bring, and why anyone should trust them with an opportunity.
So we've talked to so many students, schools, et cetera, about how even students that are kind of doing all the things sometimes still struggle when they're asked the dreaded question in an interview, tell me about yourself. And connecting the learning that they're actually doing in schools, that's one thing that's, I think, super powerful. They're doing this work, but they need to connect it to who they are, which is why we're super excited to have Lindsay here today. So Lindsay and I have known each other quite a while. So it's Lindsey McCormick, Director of College and Career Readiness for Caroline County Public Schools on the Eastern Shore of Maryland. And Lindsay, we're excited to have you.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to be with you all today.
So, I think this all, I mean, we could have said this all started when our kids did gymnastics together, but it's not how this particularly started. This started in a conversation after we had done a webinar and you thought like, oh, what are these people doing? Let me check it out. So from your viewpoint,
Mhm.
all things CTE and career and college ready fall in your purview, which is not a small task for sure. And I know that you're doing some really cool initiatives around it. So, what is the problem that you're seeing in the space that brought you to chat with us today? Basically, just give an overview.
Absolutely. So again, thank you everybody for joining and hearing what I have to say and the journey that I've been on. So in Maryland, approximately 3 years ago, we had a new law go into effect, the blueprint, and that brought career coaching kind of as a highlight of the blueprint. Um, and we have career coaching in grades 6 through 12. Um, What does that mean? Well, in Caroline County, we're doing a tiered system. So, tier one kind of means whole group student lessons where students are learning their strengths, their interests, their values. And then, based upon that, we're narrowing it down. And in tier two, we are taking students out on field trips to different businesses, different colleges, having guest speakers come in. And tier three would be those one-on-one individual conversations. And since that's new, 3 years now, we've done a lot more than we had been doing prior. But I still feel or felt something just wasn't connecting. Students now could maybe regurgitate what the assessment said their strength was, or regurgitate what career came up as possible through our assessment platform. But I really didn't think that kids truly understood how those strengths, interests, and values that they had on an assessment really played out into life. And then, as Marnie just said, I'm not on much social media, but I am on Facebook and I am on Twitter, not as much as I probably should be. Um, but on Facebook, I was just scrolling. And as Marnie said, we've known each other for a long time. And I was seeing different things that Marnie was doing. I listened to a webinar that Marnie and Nick actually did. And I said, oh my gosh, this is what I need. And truly, Marnie and I connected. And that's kind of where the story began or
Yeah.
begins.
So that's interesting, Lindsay. So a couple of years ago, my son was stamped really in Georgia as college and career ready. He was in a pathway for computer science. He had different certifications. Um, but was he really ready? And that's the question that Marty and I always talk about. I mean, can you discuss a little bit? You talked a little bit about what you saw the disconnect was, but when you look at where you were and other districts around you, what's truly the difference between being college and career ready through the standard definition today versus what students actually experience?
Absolutely. And they are a vast difference. Um, because college and career ready in the state of Maryland is assessed at the end of 10th grade, and it is truly assessment and grade based. So it is based on your GPA, it is based on um, certain scores on assessments, whether it be an algebra assessment in high school, it could be on SAT, it's your English. Um, 10 assessment and your GPA. Um, well, there could be really good test takers and really good students who do not have the necessary skills for being a college student or being a very good employee in a career. And so on paper, college and career readiness has to do with math and English. Um, in in actuality, it's really so much more than that. Caroline County, and I know we might get into this a little bit later, Caroline County does have and has for a couple years had a portrait of a graduate. Um, and that's all it was. It's what we have, it's what we say. Um, but we really believe that in order for a student to be successful when they go into college or be successful when they are in a starting of their career, they really need to understand how to be self-directed as a learner. They have to be really good communicators. Well, I might be a straight A student and a horrible communicator. So I might be deemed college and career ready, but I don't have those skills. Um, I need to be compassionate. I need to know how to work in a team. Very few things are you independently working and not collaborating with anyone. And that again is whether you are going to college directly out of high school or if you're going directly into a career.
So that's interesting. Yeah, just one follow-up question to that, right? So, so the system is basically telling students that they are ready. I mean, is it your opinion, Lindsay, do the students truly feel like they really are ready? I mean, is there a disconnect between what the system's telling them that they are ready, and then how do students really feel about that? Do you have any guesses to that?
Well, I mean, I can talk to that on my own personal students. My own
Yeah.
personal students were deemed, even before we had college and career ready, they would have met those standards on paper. And I had one of my children who is not a college graduate right now. She is being very successful in a career, or in a job.
Mhm.
But with that being said, that piece of paper of college and career ready didn't necessarily mean she was ready to go away to a 4-year university. Um, we have not at this point done too much of that back end, because once the student is no longer ours in high school, we have a very hard time gathering
Yep.
data on their next steps. Um, we are hoping that truly through our assessment platform, we use Naviance. And so through that, there are the ability for students to keep it 2 years post high school. And so we are just going to implement that this year and hope that we can gather some of that data to see if some of the things we are now doing, but we don't have the past data. Um, some of the data just talking to students and students who are in dual enrollment. Another one of my roles is I oversee dual enrollment for the district. And so I see a lot of students in that who um, it can be a challenge. It is very different. And we have found that some of the policies and regulations that we have in high school, where we're still guiding students,
Mm.
drop off when you get to dual enrollment or college. And that is a transition that students have to understand and need some of these additional skills to manage.
Yeah. It's interesting because you mentioned your student, your personal student, and my son, same way, would have for sure checked all the boxes and had been told like you would make a good engineer. But it's interesting when he went to school, he that was just not, there were so many reasons, personality based, like character skill based, that did not align with that. And he struggled for a bit. He went and got a job and then for 6 months, I think every day on his way home from work, I got fussing about the job because it really rubbed some of his core values the wrong way. And we took him through the same process that we just wrote the book about. And he has now found a career that he really quite likes.
Right.
And so it's interesting when they start connecting the dots between really who they are and their values to the work that they're doing, a world of difference, including mental health. I mean, I feel like he's a much happier human than he was. Now after work, I don't get the fussing complaints, which makes for a more happier mama too. So, the book that we wrote was The Business of You, and that's what we'd done the webinar on. And I can remember after we met, right, gave you a copy of the book. I mean, quick read, right? That it was designed to be 2.5 hours, a lot of white space, a lot of thinking time for students. And I think you texted me 2.5 hours later and said, like, okay, how do we do this?
Mhm.
So tell me what you thought or think of that idea of what we walked through in The Business of You.
Absolutely. So, it's exactly what Marnie said. I mean, I watched the webinar, I heard everything about the book, and I was like, I have to get my hands on a copy of this book. I have to read it, and I have to see, is this going to make a difference for my students? And again, Marnie said you can either listen to it on audio for about 2.5 hours, or you can read it and be done in about 2 hours. You could probably, put the speed up on the
Yeah,
text of
you
the book
can,
as
yes.
well. But with that being said, I really believed that this was going to be the connection for our students between the college and career ready on paper, um, and the actuality of being prepared for their next step after high school. And so Caroline County has a graduation requirement of a financial literacy class. And in there are in the class, there are some standards that go along with readiness and obviously financial. And it is a Caroline County graduation requirement. So we have a little bit of leeway in that class because it is not a State Department requirement. So at that point, I went to one of the teachers who is also a CTE teacher and a financial literacy class teacher. Um, and that class it's primarily for CTE students. And I just kind of broached this topic with him. Would you be willing to pilot this book with the help of the high school career coach? To incorporate this book with lessons that we write into your classroom. Gave him a copy of the book, reached out to a teacher of another CTE program, which was engineering. He just happens to be a teacher that is always very interested and willing to do anything for his students, and really goes above and beyond. So I thought, well, the one with the CTE students might be more the career focused students, and engineering might be more the college focused students. Um, and so I went to our assistant superintendent, asked support to do a pilot test. Um, and that's where I said to Marnie, this idea is like just I can't stop thinking about it. We were texting at night. I'm like, I'm sorry. She's like, no, 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 my brain works the same way. And we were just spitfiring ideas. And I think literally by the next day, I had two lessons written, and I'd shared a spreadsheet with Marnie saying, it is my brain kind of on the same wave as what you want the book to accomplish? Um, I can keep going, or you look like you wanted to
Well,
jump in, Marnie.
Well, I was going to jump in and say for folks that aren't familiar with the book, we help students. So there's a character in the book. So it's not like a textbook, right? It's a business fable where Sydney's a student who's done all the right things, but isn't doesn't understand who she is enough to really find a job that she's interested in or interview. And through the book, she is given a mentor and an app that helps her figure out her core values and do all of these lessons. It's called the business of you because she walks through every department and figures out how she is the chief human resource officer, how she's the chief financial officer of her own life. And so I remember the conversation you and I had where we broke it up into four big pillars that would help students figure out who they were, to then ask questions of themselves and others so that they could better communicate, like you said, figure out who their support network is and really create a plan. So that I just wanted to give that framework for folks that weren't familiar with it. The book really talks through Sydney's journey, and at the end of each department section, there's her journal pages of what she's thinking about and what she figured out about herself. And the lessons that you wrote kind of parallel a bit of that for the students. So yeah, keep go on. Sorry for
Um,
interrupting.
and so we did go ahead and, as Marnie said, we came up with the five big questions. Who are you? Where are you going? How will you get there? What makes you stand out? And who will help you get there? Um, and truly, because of the timing, wish they'd done the webinar in July so that I would have had some time to prepare before the school year. But with that being said, I only had 4 months before this semester was going to be over. And because it was for me, a last minute, not really built into our scope and sequence for first semester, I decided to just do one lesson a month. So 4 lessons for the book for this year. Would I change that? Absolutely. And I can talk about that later. But so we did a lesson October, November, December, and we have one more to go. It's either the end of this week or next week to round it out. We combined a couple chapters into each, but we had the students, and we did this in various ways. We either had the students independently read with some sort of, just good teaching with something to keep track of their notes. Some we did audio reading with the book on tape. And some we just had students read, kind of popcorn reading around the room. And after reading, it was clear uh, for me that the true lesson could be done with each chapter or 2 chapters combined, and that would be the ideal way to ensure that students not only were understanding the book, but or not only reading the book, but understanding, comprehending it, and most importantly, being able to articulate what they learned and how they'd put it into practice. Um,
That's awesome. So I'm curious as you kind of describe all of those things. Lindsay, what you gave us a little precursor while we were in the green room before the show started, but can you describe a little bit of the reaction of the students, what the reaction has been to this point? Have they surprised you at all? And I'd also be curious if you had any specific insights from the teachers as well who are working with the students and what their feedback was
They're
yeah.
high
to the
school, so I
progress so
can
far.
guarantee a surprise.
Yeah.
Yes, I was very surprised. We're talking, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade students who some of which care and some of which whom really don't care. They're just going to go through the motions, and their main goal is just to get out of high school at this point in their life. But I did survey students. We are not, as I said, done all 4 lessons. So at this point, they've completed 3 of the lessons. Um, and 80% of the students who responded to the survey shared that their meaning of college and career ready had changed and shifted since being a part of this book study. 82% of the students said it made them think about their next steps after high school in a different way. And that was really impactful for me because I don't necessarily know how they were thinking about it before, but
Mm.
many of them are now thinking, oh, wow, I need to be like Sydney. I need to, know who I am. I need to be able to articulate it and in greater detail than, hi, I'm Lindsey McCormick. I'm a dependable employee. Right? I have to be able to say, I'm Lindsay McCormick, I'm a dependable employee. And an example of that is that, I show up before field hockey practice and I ensure that blah, 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 blah is done before my teammates come in, and be able to articulate and give examples. Um, and then this statistic is, I can't speak. This statistic is what really stood out to me. Again, 10th, 11th, and 12th graders, 95% of the students who responded believe that other students should read the book and be associated with lessons.
I,
And that to me is just mind blowing. When I first, you asked about the teachers as well. When I first gave the teachers a copy, one, just like I did, but didn't expect it, one teacher actually emailed me about 3 hours after I had sent him the initial interest email. He said, I just bought the audiobook off of Amazon. I've completed it and I'm 100% in. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay. This is
also a dependable employee.
right. Um, and then the other teacher was, yeah, I'd love to be a part of this. I had the opportunity at one of our CTE PDs, professional development opportunities, prior to the start of the book. I actually kind of did a test run of lesson one with all of my CTE teachers, which gave me the opportunity to practice the lesson that I was going to be doing in front of students, but also gauge with teachers to see their interest and if even from one lesson could they glean any information to be able to share with their students. Um, it was incredibly successful, and some of those teachers have used bits and pieces, or at least they are having different conversations with students, even if they only know the key words from the book. Um, but it's shifted the way teachers are talking to students in just a very short amount of time.
So I want to bring something up here, and I don't know that I've mentioned this to you. We've talked to a lot of teachers, supervisors about this problem where students really couldn't communicate their story. And I ran into an English supervisor who said, "Do you know why this happened?" And I'm always intrigued by, wait, there's actually a reason for this? Like, yes, maybe we could solve that problem. She said when Common Core curriculum came out, or everyone's new flavor of that everyone was really driven toward a focus of citing text-based evidence, right? I think every parent on the planet knows their child has to cite text-based evidence for any response. And she said what they took out of the curriculum was personal narrative. So while students all the way through school were still allowed to have their opinion about whatever they were doing, they had to support it with text-based evidence, not support it with experiences from their own life. So to your point, they were allowed to say that being a dependable employee was important, and maybe they had a story about one, but their experience on the field hockey field wasn't what they got to write about. And I think that's really interesting that like that's why teachers are already teaching these elements, but because students aren't specifically reflecting on it, that's kind of leaving the gap. So anyway, I take us off track, but I am excited to hear that the teachers knew like immediately, oh yes, okay, I can just feed this in. It's not like you have to create a whole new curriculum and find another way to get one more required course in, right? It kind of fits in. So off of that, soapbox now lowered. I wanted you to talk about the career day that you had with the Rotary. I thought that was a really cool event. I have your all of the handouts here because I will happily show all of the props if you want, because I thought you did some really cool things in sort of flipping the script on how to include character skills. So do you want to chat about that?
Sure. So we work very closely with our Rotary Club, Denton Rotary Club, Caroline County Rotary Club, and we put on a career fair for 10th grade students, but we're very particular in that we are looking for students who, our first gauge is their GPA. And even though I said that that's not a college and career specific, we take a look at who are the students who are about a 1.5 to a 2.0, 1.0 to 2.0 GPA that potentially are not college bound at this point in their career and really focusing on a career. And so we take a look at them, and we obviously a career fair in general, but once they get there, students have the opportunity um, sorry, in advance, students have the opportunity to take a look at their Strengths Explorer in the Navient system. Just this year, we ensured that every single 6th through 12th grade student had the opportunity to take it this year. And so they had those results. So were they achieving, caring, competing, confident, dependable? Now, again, that's just based on an assessment, but it's a starting point. When each of the businesses came in to the career fair and they were getting set up, we had on the table little signs, and you might have some of what the words are.
They
Thank
do.
you.
Yeah. So you had like caring and teaching, solving puzzles and problems, protect and serve, managing money and business are examples. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And so we had each business take them and put them on, to display them on their booth so that when students came up, they had an opportunity to know this career is mainly focused with these characteristics. And then students knew their strengths from the Strengths Explorer and Naviance, and were able to make connections between what I, as a future employee, have and what this career um, primarily is. Now, we all know that if you go to um, a bank per se, a teller is one position, but there is also human resources and there is also custodial and there are also, so we just did it on the primary role of that business, career at that
And
business.
where an entry level career really fitting.
Yep.
I thought when I looked at the signs, it made sense to me. Yeah.
Correct. We also had the opportunity during the Rotary Career Fair to give the students guiding or leading questions in order to take to the business table. Yeah, question options. And this was our first year of doing that, as opposed to just saying, go explore the businesses. And in the past, I would see students just kind of standing there, and maybe they'd take the free sunglasses or the free pen or, the definitely the piece of candy that the business brought. But this year was some really meaningful conversations, and I would watch students with this list of questions and having a true dialogue, even and one thing I will remember next year, I forgot to tell the businesses that I was giving these questions to the students.
They suddenly had to answer a lot more than they.
And they had used than they had in the past. And so it was interesting because they were like, wow, these kids are really asking good questions and they're engaged and they want to know. Um, but again, students don't know what to ask if they've never done that before, right? We're here to guide them and teach them. And so just having some starters gave an opportunity for them to really have a beneficial time in the career fair.
And that, I mean, that's awesome. I mean, that whole approach, I think as somebody who used to hire a lot of people straight out of high school, that always felt like the missing piece, right? This is they're not comfortable communicating their value in soft skills. They were comfortable walking through their resume, but not really how to share their story. Did you see it all where students any feedback in terms of they were actually surprised themselves at how successful this was, or was it mostly just your observation just as a whole?
No, I did survey them, and unfortunately, I don't really have the statistics right in front of me. But overwhelmingly, and I know that that's 50% or above, but overwhelmingly, students were really pleased with their day. They had the opportunity also during this career fair, not just to go visit businesses, but we had workshops for them on resume writing. Marnie did one on with the book. Um, and we had a mental health kind of self-awareness, mental health, take care of yourself, healthy, wise session. And we had the community college there. And so overwhelmingly, the students who were there really believed that it was a very purposeful, meaningful day for them. We also asked if they would be willing to come back and be a table mentor the following year as a student lead. And I do know this, 90% of the students said, yes, I'd be willing to come back and be a student mentor. And
Wow.
so that was just a student who was sitting at their table there to help guide discussion. We did have an adult table mentor as well, but sometimes students relate better to students. And so if they had somebody there, and so I was very pleased that 90% said that they would be willing next year to come back.
That's tremendous. I wouldn't, like you said, I was there. That's impressive that that many wanted to come back and do that. Yeah.
Maybe it was the pizza for lunch.
Well, I
However,
was gonna say, what were they thinking? Free pizza for lunch? But they also saw engaged student leaders. So it's not like they thought they were just going to get to come and sit and eat free pizza. They have to participate, right?
correct.
Really good questions for the table mentors as well to generate conversations with the tables. I thought it was very cool. Um, you had mentioned earlier your portrait of a graduate and kind of listed some of the skills. I actually have it up on my screen as well, so I could see them. So, what what do you see that students are doing toward this portrait of a graduate, right? That they weren't doing before when it was the checklist of graduation requirements? Like, is
Right.
there a difference in how you're feeling about actually doing the portrait of the graduate?
I'm going to say it's a work in progress.
Yeah.
Full transparency, I still believe it is a piece of paper or it is on the website. And my guess is most of our students right now don't know that we even have a portrait of a graduate. That is something that through the business of you and our career coaching, we will continue to amplify. I think it is something, it's not visibly anywhere, which it shocks me.
Shocked me too. Like you have to know what you're looking for to find an image of it on a website. And it's not just yours. It's true for a lot of districts. It's really not shown.
But not just on our website. I mean, in our buildings,
Oh, yeah. I can.
right? I mean, I feel like it should be, this is what we believe. Now, I am very pleased to say that our mission and our vision includes
Yeah. A lot of
the a
images.
lot of the portrait of a graduate, and that is very, very forward facing. That is very known by all staff members from top to everywhere. And so we've done a very good job with our mission and vision, and believe that we need to do the same with the portrait of a graduate. I do believe that we are getting better at highlighting each of the smaller aspects that add up to the full portrait individually, but not as a portrait as a whole.
That's awesome. Well, I know Marnie, I speak for you when I say, well, we can't wait for everyone to see what we're cooking up with Blue because I think we have a lot of tools that could help with that. But on the and just for those that don't know and haven't read the book, Blue is the app that Sydney uses within our book, The Business of You, and Marty and I are actively working to build that. But you've done so much, Lindsay. I mean, what's next? You're through three or four lessons, for the rest of the school year. I
Yeah.
presume that's your target. Where do you see this going next?
So honestly, just like from the student data that said yes, 95% believe all students should have this. That is the data that I need to show that says that this pilot was successful. If students are saying it, and so we do have an educational foundation in our area that I have been keeping abreast of what's been going on within this pilot. Um, and I am going to be going to them at the end of the semester and asking for additional funding in order to fund this book so that every student who is a graduate of Caroline County will have had an opportunity in high school to have gone through this book, participate in the lessons, um, and really make it meaningful to them. I would like to expand the lessons. I don't think four is enough. And I also think that there's too much time in between, once a month and going back to it. It needs to be quicker than that for students to remember what did we read in chapter one and two
Yeah.
3 weeks ago. Um, I am not the super, shockingly, but I have a lot of hats, but I am not the supervisor of our financial literacy class.
How you?
Well, and I keep saying it really does fit under what I'm doing, but I don't want to say it. And I
Oh,
know I just said it very publicly. But I don't want to say it because I don't need any more.
no.
But with that being said, I am close with the supervisor who does know about this pilot as well. I would like to see it incorporated into that specific course because I really see the connections between other standards in that course and the book, as well as I said earlier, it is not an MSDE state requirement; it's just a local requirement.
Um,
Um,
no, go ahead.
that I was just going to say, so I'd like to expand the lessons to more than four, do them in a more compact, and ensure that every student who graduates in Caroline County through the financial literacy class has an opportunity for this.
So I was going to mention for folks that don't have a financial literacy that every student's take some of the ways we've seen other schools using it. So a lot of schools now have a flex period or advisory period. They're layering it into that or having school counselors use that as to get this into junior year. So instead of showing up senior year and saying like list all of your, experiences, now go write an essay. This gives some kind of preemptive strikes to that. Are there other models, Nick, that we've seen? Those are the ones we hear in English classes. So that's where a lot of
I mean, I have ideas, but I just don't think that they'd work for Caroline, but I can share some.
let's hear it.
There are some states that require a portfolio prior to graduation, and to incorporate evidence of their learning of this book, into those digital portfolios. Work-based learning and apprenticeships is, we're trying to scale that in the state of Maryland and truly across the nation. And I really do believe that some of this book could be used in some of that pre-placement kind of readiness, um, in order, so a prerequisite to doing work-based learning or an apprenticeship could be something with this. Um, I also think it really does, for every CTE course, we only have, 12 to 15 teachers that are CTE teachers. If I train them as a whole, it's not going to get every single student in Caroline County, but it would get many. And so it could be the one lesson a month, but still have access to the learning. Um, so those were just some other things that I had thought about. And then truly depending, there are, we have like a ninth grade academy that does a summer boot camp in advance. What a great opportunity for a summer opportunity for students prior to even coming in as that transition year, or a purposeful planned, 10th to 11th grade once you're CCR or not CCR for that matter. And then, truly, I really do believe another step is to add family and community connections. I'm not at that point yet, but this is not just a school system and student. Parents really have to become involved. And so whether that is having parent nights, to share the progress or share, depending on how we expand lessons, our students there to lead kind of a parent teacher student conference with their ability to share who they are. Um, just some of the ideas that I had thought about.
Love
We
it. That
love every one of them.
I know. I've now got an additional page of notes. And it's interesting, the last one where the students lead, Nick and I also often talk about reverse career fairs where the students set up instead of the businesses, and businesses can come around and meet students as they're kind of pitching themselves. And the other piece, when you said family and community connections, when I look at lots of districts, portraits of a graduate, a lot of the ways students are enhancing those skills are happening where they're volunteering at an after school job, after school clubs, that type of thing. So there are absolutely threads where they're getting some of those skills elsewhere. So to be able to pull them into the conversation makes total sense. Nick, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking, Lindsay, thank you so much for sharing all this information. I'd like to end with, I mean, you've, you talked about early on as we first jumped on this call, seeing a gap there, something needs to change. And you've talked about a lot of this during this call, but any last words of advice for folks that are listening to this that know something needs to change but aren't really sure where to start?
Yeah, sure. I can say it in 3 words. Buy the book.
Aw.
But honestly, I truly mean that because even though I'm piloting with a small group of students, it's obviously made an impact on them. And so uh it it was powerful as an adult, but I have that knowledge and I have that information. But these students don't. And so truly, I've impacted a small number of students, hope to impact more, but I truly believe that it's this book. I have, we've been doing the career coaching for 3 years, but there's still been that missing link. Um, to make the connection between what we're doing with the students understanding what their strengths, interests, or values are. But again, as I said earlier, it's not just being able to regurgitate it, it's really being able to analyze and know how to connect that to their next steps. And that's exactly what the Business of You does. It shows students in a very student-friendly story format how to connect that information for their benefit. And so I say buy the book, find a way to incorporate it into the classroom. Um, have teacher champions, right? I now have 2 champions. So I have two, and I know it's not many, but you have to start somewhere. So I have 2 teacher champions who are there to say, absolutely, let's do this. And it is meaningful, and I can give up a portion of my content to be able to do this because I make those connections throughout.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I did put in the chat a link to the Amazon page of the book, but I also put the businessofyou.ai website. There is a blue app. You can read more about the book there, but there's also a blue app tab that if folks want to get on the waiting list for that to see what we're doing there. Um, and somebody else asked in the chat if we would share the lessons, and Lindsay has said yes, that we can share all the things that they have done. So you will get an email tomorrow that will have this recording, that will have the lessons. I worked with another district and built 18 reflections, so one for each chapter. So we also have that will include. So all of those resources will ship your way. And if anybody wants to chat, Lindsay, are you game for a chat? You want folks to connect with you on LinkedIn? Is that
Absolutely. I can put my email in the chat too.
okay? Perfect.
And I do just want to, thank, the teachers who were willing to pilot and my high school career coach who was willing to be a part of this as well. If it weren't for them, this wouldn't have been successful in Caroline County. So I just want to, publicly thank them for their willingness and again, them being the champions.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, thank you again so much. We've really appreciated hearing all of the good things that you're doing because I've certainly enjoyed watching from not too far away. And Lindsay just put her email in the chat, and we'll include it in the email that we send out to for anybody that had to leave early. Thanks so much, all.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you all for coming.